No, I mean, because when you're thinking of victims of this awful world, you think of Michelle Obama and how terrible we've all been to her. This woman is a one-woman destitution derby. Every time we check in on her at her podcast, she is feeling sorry for herself. She is criticizing Barack Obama or this country. She never has a positive word to say about
Just came off a junket. I think you remember, Megyn. She went to Berlin. A private leftist group asked her to speak, and it was for $750,000 for 60 minutes. It worked out to about $12,000 a minute. And it was very funny about her because I only bring this up because in that interview, I think you remember, she was making fun of capitalism. She said it's supposed to trickle down, but it doesn't even trickle down now. And I'm thinking, well, you just made $12,500 a minute. And you know what, Michelle? You were asked to speak on DEI, but you didn't speak on E. You only spoke on D.
Beneath the spotlight and sat in speeches, the Michelle Obama myth just imploded. Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson didn't hold back. They launched a merciless roast that shattered the glossy image, torching every carefully rehearsed narrative. From the choreographed sorrow to the mansion-wrapped modesty, nothing was spared. This wasn't just a critique. It was a full-on demolition of the brand America was told to worship. If you thought Michelle stood above reproach, prepare for the curtain to fall hard and fast.
To right that ship. Enter Michelle Obama. All the speculation about whether Biden can make it, and he got lost even at the last event. He was wandering around on the stage when he made his January 6th remarks. Jill Biden had to save him. Enter Michelle Obama, who sits down in this popular podcast, though I've never heard of it, but apparently it's popular. With this guy, she has nothing to promote. She has no book. She has no event. So that means she called them and said, I have something to say. And she very clearly has something to say.
Tucker or one, they say these things that aren't true, whether it's Michelle Obama talking about black lives being indiscriminately, almost daily killed on the street, or Andrew Cuomo with the worst record about the virus and then bragging as if it was the best, because there is no media as we used to know it. NBC, ABC, the network news, CNN, MSNBC, PBS, NPR, they fuse with the progressive movement in general and the Democratic Party in particular.
If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Michelle Obama, someone who turned a White House wardrobe into a revolution and somehow walked away with a legacy built more on book deals than actual backbone. Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson took one look at this polished monument of PR perfection and decided to turn it into a comedy demolition derby. Because underneath the layers of Vogue covers, late-night talk show dances, and curated outrage lies one of the most gloriously overrated political figures of the last 2 decades. And the roast began not with hesitation, but with a flamethrower aimed directly at the myth machine.
Speech was diversity and inclusion, but why didn't you put equity in there? Because it's pretty unequal for you to get $12,500, which is more than most people in the world make an entire year. You made in a minute. And so they have this bad habit, the Obamas, that every time there's a social justice question, whether it was George Floyd or economic downturn, they appear. Sometimes they appear from Kalorama, sometimes from Martha's Vineyard, sometimes from the new Hawaii mansion, sometimes from their old Chicago digs. But they come out and they lecture the country on its illiberal.
Megyn Kelly wasted zero time peeling back the icon sticker. She dove headfirst into the absurd idea that Michelle Obama's popularity is supposed equal credibility. Being a well-dressed motivational speaker doesn't make you a policy expert. It makes you a brand. And Michelle has spent years marketing herself with all the finesse of a corporate mascot, smiling for cameras while sidestepping any real substance. She's been packaged, promoted, and polished into this flawless image of grace and dignity. But peel off the gloss, and what you get is an angry lecture in designer heels.
She never has a positive word to say about anything. And the latest example was when she went on this other guy's podcast, Jay Shetty. She goes and sits down with him, and he asks her, what are you afraid of? And she starts off by saying, well, it's not, my fears aren't for me. You know, I think about the streets. My fears aren't for me.
Well, in this current climate for me, it's, what's happening to immigrants.
I mean, I travel in a 4-car mode.
Victor Davis Hanson lit up the second act of this roast by tracing the weird phenomenon of Michelle Obama's permanent victim complex. This is a woman who vacationed like royalty, lived rent-free in the most powerful house on earth, and walked away with a multi-million-dollar media empire. Yet, she still manages to find a way to act like America owes her an apology. At some point, playing the oppression card while hosting Netflix specials becomes less inspiring and more insulting.
After all, I'm Michelle Obama. She actually says this. And then she says, but, I worry for my girls because, not that much because they are sort of recognizable, but I'm worried about them.
So it's not the fear for myself anymore. I drive around in a 4-car motorcade with a police escort. I'm Michelle Obama. I do still worry about my daughters in the world, even though they are some.
Megyn couldn't help but dive into the carefully curated contradictions. Michelle claims to hate politics, yet never misses an opportunity to weaponize every social issue like it's a campaign rally. She insists she's just like everyone else in the comfort of her $12 million Martha's Vineyard mansion. It's like trying to convince the audience she's relatable while filming from the top of Mount Olympus. And somehow the press eats it up like it's gospel.
He said, because I think he had the vision of splicing her in. And you almost couldn't believe them. It was like, I think you might need to go back and check that. There's no way that must have come from some other parody. But no, time and time again, it was her exact words. She's even more miserable than we portrayed her.
Even more. And since then, I can't wait to see how this is received because I think it's another banger. But she did that podcast recently where she said, I think you talked.
Then came the ultimate sleight of hand, the transformation from First Lady to pop culture saint. Victor pointed out the irony of a woman who constantly decried political divisiveness while spending 8 years belittling every opposing idea as beneath her Ivy League wisdom. If self-righteousness were a sport, Michelle Obama would have multiple gold medals and her own Wheaties box. Her ability to spin a mundane anecdote about eating vegetables into a dramatic tale of struggle is almost artistic. This was someone who took cafeteria carrots and turned them into a federal issue. And while schools were choking down cardboard-flavored tofu nuggets, Michelle was probably dining on gourmet meals behind the scenes. Her entire nutrition campaign felt less like public service and more like a masterclass in virtue signaling. Pointless, preachy, and packaged for press.
Here she is talking about it. If it were me, I would say something nice about him. I would say he's just so charming. It was meant to be. I knew he could heal the earth in the way he did. There was only one person who could do it, and it was my husband, Barack Obama, whatever. Then she gets on to talking a little bit about him personally, and this is how that sounded. Plot 18.
When a girlfriend comes to visit, it's usually like, you got to stay for 2 days because it's going to take us
so much time to capture.
Victor wasn't about to let the education angle slide either. He highlighted how Michelle always talked about fighting for kids while quietly sending her own to elite private schools far removed from the mess of public education. And when parents dared to question the curriculum, guess who magically vanished from the conversation? The same woman who claimed to care so deeply. Apparently, advocacy has an expiration date, and it usually coincides with the release of a new podcast episode or a glossy magazine cover. Megyn then fired off at Michelle's obsession with being seen. The only thing Michelle Obama hasn't been seen doing is taking responsibility for any of the divisiveness she helped stoke, while draped in the cloak of moral superiority. Victor went for the legacy mythology next. Michelle has been framed as this once-in-a-generation trailblazer, a national treasure whose impact is immeasurable. But let's be honest, the lasting impact is a generation of Instagram captions that sound like repurposed campaign slogans. And while her memoir sits unread on half the coffee tables in America, her real contribution was redefining how to do absolutely everything for applause. Real world change, not so much. But coordinated outfits with political undertones, flawless.
So they have this bad habit, the Obamas, that every time there's a social justice question, whether it was George Floyd or economic downturn, they appear. Sometimes they appear from Kalorama, sometimes from Martha's Vineyard, sometimes from the new Hawaii mansion, sometimes from their old Chicago digs. But they come out and they lecture the country on its
Megyn dug even deeper into the mess of Michelle's faux humility. This is someone who consistently reminds everyone she never wanted this life, while cashing every check and extending every spotlight. She hated the attention, she claims, right before launching another tour, another book, and another streaming special. Michelle's exit from public life has lasted longer than most presidencies and has been more choreographed than a Super Bowl halftime show. Victor shredded the real magic trick. How Michelle has managed to stay politically relevant without ever officially running for office. It's the most passive-aggressive power grab in modern history. Always lingering, always influencing, never committing. Megyn made it clear, Michelle's popularity isn't the result of courage. It's the result of curation. Every appearance is a masterclass in emotional manipulation. 1 part tears, 2 parts self-importance, all mixed in a blender of historical revision.
He is interviewing Dr. Sharon Malone, perhaps better known as former Attorney General Eric Holder's wife. And therein lies the problem, as these 2 ladies, married to 2 very famous men, are pissed that they are not the alpha in terms of popularity and recognition.
She's less of a leader and more of a lifestyle brand. And somewhere along the way, people forgot to ask what she's actually done, aside from being very good at being admired. Victor brought the intellectual hammer down, dissecting Michelle's obsession with moral posturing. She's always talking about the soul of the nation, decency, honor. But when it came time to call out real issues within her own political tribe, she took a permanent vow of silence. Apparently, speaking truth to power is only noble when it's aimed at the other side. The hypocrisy is thick enough to bottle and sell as syrup. Megyn didn't let Michelle's media protection bubble go unnoticed either. Any criticism is framed as an attack. Any disagreement is labeled as hate. The woman's entire public presence is guarded like a royal baby with pundits and journalists, offering nothing but applause out of fear of backlash. Michelle's the only public figure who can serve up tired cliches and still get a standing ovation for bravery. Bravery from a woman whose biggest risk is matching shoes with a controversial color scheme.
Worse than Watergate, because the President of the United States knew that he didn't have the intelligence to suggest that Donald Trump was a Russian asset. He thought that narrative would have worked in the election. It didn't. Donald Trump, I think, surprised to himself, was elected. So here you have a lame duck president trying to destroy the incoming president. He essentially did. There was no reason for Clapper or Brennan, or in the case of the FBI, to tell Barack Obama there is signs of Russian collusion. He gave the game away. He was praised.
Victor concluded that Michelle Obama might go down as the most glorified underachiever in modern political memory. A first lady who entered with enormous potential and left with a book deal, a podcast, and a never-ending victim monologue. While real leaders were wrestling with policy and public blowback, Michelle was off writing poetry about her feelings and giving TED Talks about how hard it is to shop at Target without being recognized. And Megyn's final punchline landed like thunder. This roast wasn't just personal, it was surgical. Megyn Kelly and Victor Davis Hanson didn't just mock the myth of Michelle Obama. They bulldozed it piece by piece, smile by smile, speech by speech. And still, somehow there's more to say. Because when your career is built on carefully managed contradictions, there's always another layer to expose, another applause line to deconstruct, another overhyped appearance to reduce to the spectacle it really is. And that's exactly where this roast is heading next.
He picked 4 or 5 other analysts and then presented a false picture to Barack Obama. Or did he? Or did Barack Obama request that he do that? It'll be he said. Then we come to James Clapper. He was sitting at this meeting in December of 2016 where he gave a false assessment and he misrepresented.
Megyn and Victor made painfully clear is that Michelle Obama's greatest accomplishment wasn't in public service. It was in turning self-promotion into a spiritual discipline. She didn't walk away from the spotlight. She expanded it. Every time the public started to forget, there came another sit-down interview filled with dramatic pauses, nostalgic flashbacks, and just enough vague social commentary to keep her floating above criticism like a weather balloon of selective outrage. Trapped in a world that just doesn't understand how heavy the designer blazer of moral leadership really is, she doesn't talk to inform. She talks to meme, and somehow it works. She's turned discomfort into a brand and victimhood into a marketing plan. Victor, never one to let delusion go unchecked, tore into the illusion of sacrifice.
Mixed messages. They kind of told one person, we want an open convention. The other is that Kamala should be. They didn't know who was going to win for 72 hours is what I'm getting at. And they were trying and trying. I think their heart said they wanted a black woman that they thought they could control in the same fashion they control a demented white male like Biden, but they weren't sure about that.
Michelle presents her time in the White House as this epic burden she nobly carried, as if she'd been conscripted to live in luxury against her will, as if private jets, custom gowns, and global influence were some kind of personal sentence she courageously endured for the good of the nation. The woman had a glam squad and an international platform, but you'd think she'd spent 8 years in solitary confinement based on her post-First Lady memoir therapy tour. And then came the ultimate roast, the myth of authenticity. Megyn unpacked the irony that someone so hyper-curated, so obsessively guarded, still markets herself as raw and real. It's all pretend relatability, wrapped in a $4,000 jacket. Michelle's brand of authenticity is like a reality show with a script and 20 producers. Slick, manipulative, and polished to the point of parody.
Many people don't know. I mean, much is not covered. You're paying for every bit of food that you eat. You're not paying for housing and the staff in it, but everything, even travel. If you're not traveling with the president, if your kids are coming on a Bright Star, which is the First Lady's plane, we had to play.
Michelle Obama, listen to this.
And at this phase of my life, I'm in therapy right now because I'm transitioning. I'm 60 years old. I've finished a really hard thing in my life with my family intact. I'm an empty nester. My girls are they've been launched. And now for the first time, as I've said before, every choice that I'm making is completely mine.
Victor wrapped the session by drawing the final line between image and impact. Michelle Obama's influence is immense, but the depth is ankle deep. Her speeches are poetic but empty. Her books are thick but forgettable. Her fame is global, yet her convictions always stop short of accountability. She's a headline without a legacy, a moment without a movement. And so the curtain drops, not on a hero's journey, but on a perfectly staged performance. Michelle Obama will always have fans, always have followers, and always have a fresh angle on how the world just never quite got her. But what she'll never have is what truly matters in public life. Results that outlive applause. And with that, Megyn and Victor left the stage smoking. The roast didn't just dent the myth. It caved it in. The spotlight might still shine on Michelle, but now it's revealing the cracks. Because once you scrape away the glamour, what's left isn't a leader. It's a brand well managed, well marketed, and utterly hollow. And that hollow echo, it's the sound of reality catching.